Good evening, I'm Charlie Lloyd, I'm the Vice President, and they told me to say that, so I used my name on my title. For you that haven't been here before, we're a 501c3, completely nonprofit. We don't charge dues or memberships or anything like that. We lock the doors, and we put guys there with army helmets, and you don't get out until you put money in the helmet. Just kidding. If you want to drop $1 or $2 in there, that's all we need to support our efforts for the whole year. At the end of the year, we have a couple $1,000, and all that money goes to veterans. So, here we go. We're a 501c3 non-profit, and as that, we had some conversations last month. I wasn't here. But I would like to state firmly that we are apolitical. So we have to make certain that we walk that narrow line. The guys who collect the money, I want to thank them for that. They're the bucket committee. And they'll be in the back. I'd like to start off with asking how many new first-timers do we have here? Could you raise your hands, please? Wow. Welcome. We're glad to have you, and we'd like to see you on a regular basis. The next question is very important. How many World War II veterans are here, and would you raise your hands? Thank you, gentlemen. That's why we're here. Kirk is hiding in New Brunswick. He's not here this month. He's up there eating all the lobsters out of Bay of Fundy that he can at $2 a pound. So he'll be back next time around. He always does a little thing on what happened this day and what that and all that kind of stuff. I have a little note here. In August the 2nd, 1934, does anybody know what happened? It affected all of us. German President Paul von Hindenburg died. And upon his death, Hitler became Chancellor. He now became the Führer. And the whole entire German army took a new oath of allegiance to him. He dismantled the democratic government to make room for his Third Reich. And he assured his people that the Third Reich would last for 1,000 years. Unfortunately, it lasted. Fortunately, it only lasted 11 years. But 80 million people died. So, today's a day in history. We have Mark Bell with us tonight. He called me last week and he said he was here as a guest. And he saw we were having a B-24 radio operator. And he restores old radios, aircraft, military radios. He's got a B-17 out there, a B-24. And when you're finished here, please go back and look at the radios. And Clem, I want to know if you can still work a radio. You're a radio operator on B-24, so maybe you can show them how to work it. Especially after you guys are shot up there. You probably know that radio pretty badly. We also have an association, a working relationship with the Tribute World War II in Dillsburg. Doug's here somewhere, Doug Riley. There you are. Doug has a program in Dillsburg, the 11th of August. Yeah, and it's remarkable. We've been attending the last couple of years, and we've been sending him World War II veterans to speak. He's been helping us as veterans, much like Barb and Michelle from Lewisburg. The girls bring so many World War II veterans to our table. We thank you ladies for that. We're also working with the Eisenhower Farm. I'm not going to talk about that. Chris is going to talk about that. And I think we've got everything else in place. See Hank Heim. Is Hank Heim here? We're trying to get transportation for that. Bob Rainier's here. He spoke for us a couple of years ago. He was a radio operator on C-46. He's the one that flew from India, Japan, or something like that, all the way over to China and back. So we have, there you go. Thank you, Bob, for your service. And halfway back, we got a ping jockey. A ping jockey. There's the guys that do their radar looking for submarines and destroyer escorts. Professor Emeritus Dick Donald. Dick is all the way from Williamsburg. He came with his buddy Jack Kraft. Jack is the proprietor of the Endless Mountains World War II Museum, War Memorial Museum up in Sonestown. And I really wanted to see it. And I took my wife and went for a ride. It's not quite 2 hours. Beautiful ride. We got there and it was closed. He says, Charlie, we're closed on Sundays. Now I know. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for coming. Okay. This is the point in time when I turn it over to our historian. And he's been doing the job of the Chairman and Speaker Committee, Dr. Chris Huffman, and he'll take it over from here. And you need this, and I'll get out of your way.
Should I grab that one?
No, this is mine.
Oh. Hello, everybody. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Glad you braved the rain and clouds today and came to join us tonight. Thanks, Charlie, for the announcements that you made. And Charlie wanted me to mention about Gettysburg. I mentioned that last time to you guys when Kirk was here. That we're working with them, with the National Park Service and rangers down there to support their World War II weekend in Gettysburg they have every year for World War II weekend in September every year. We've already exchanged contact information with them to get a number of veterans from our group to join them with them and speak for them. I think we recommended about 10 names, and they chose at least around 5 of our veteran contacts to speak down there. So we're going to look forward to that. And any of you that want to go down there to see it yourselves. And Charlie asked that I talk about some of our speakers coming up, and we have. I'll talk about Clem last because he's our current speaker to announce him at the end. But first, I want to talk about our later speakers. So September and October speakers. And all right, so September we have. Bill Leone, I mentioned last time, he is a Japanese American, and he was interned in one of the camps. Executive order by President Roosevelt during World War II said that those Japanese Americans on the West Coast, not actually in Hawaii, which is kind of unusual, but in like California, Washington, where Bill Leone was, and those western states had to be interned. And kind of what some people call almost like concentration camps. They had guard towers and guys with weapons, American guards with weapons and barbed wire, stuff like that. Lived in kind of barracks type areas. Had very Spartan furnishings and things like that. They could bring very few things with them. They usually had like a suitcase or so they could bring with them. That's all of their possessions they could bring to the camps when they left home. Anyway, he was there in Washington. I'm sorry, let me backtrack. He was born in Washington and raised there in Washington State, but he was actually interned in Northern California in a camp, I should say. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so he then he was drafted, and he was sent to the replacement unit of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. Some of you that have read about that might have heard about that. That was supposedly the most decorated U.S. unit in World War II. It was a Japanese-American unit. I had a student, and when I taught in Georgia history classes, he gave me a book to borrow. His grandfather had been in the 442nd. He was of partial white and Japanese-American background, and he was a student of mine. He gave me the book to read, and I went through that, and a lot of great pictures and storylines and things like that. But we had a senator, Inoue from Hawaii, you might remember him, that was actually in Japanese American combat unit in World War II, got the Medal of Honor, was a U.S. Senator for many years. Okay, so then he, before he went to join the 442nd, he actually got transferred to a intelligence language program where he learned some of those things, and then he also got trained as an infantry officer at Bildid, and then he ended up being in the Army of Occupation in Japan, where he was a Japanese ancestry, could speak Japanese fluently, of course, and then he was supposedly on a secret mission there. He wouldn't tell us much about that, so we have to kind of guess about that, but he might tell us more when he's here in September. So then October, we have Alan Shapiro is going to be our speaker. Alan, I actually not met him in person yet, but we're supposed to interview him in a few days from now. And actually Kirk's back, he might want to go with me and Charlie to do that. But anyway, he's also a very interesting guy. I had a telephone interview with him on the phone, though, a couple days ago, and took a couple pages of notes on that, and he has an interesting story, too. So Alan told us that he was actually trained as a fighter pilot. We've had a number of fighter pilot speakers here in the last few months, and in the last couple of years. And he was trained to fly the P-40 U.S. Warhawk fighter plane. And as things turned out, he didn't get transferred to a fighter unit. He actually got transferred to a glider unit flying U.S. fighter planes. And he was supposed to be in the, I believe, the Market Garden invasion September 44 against the Germans. But his actual string of gliders in that unit, the secret unit, were not actually deployed as reinforcements. So he didn't actually do that mission. But he did fly as a glider pilot, Operation Varsity, dropping U.S. airborne troops from the 101st Airborne into Operation Varsity, I believe, across the Rhine River, he said. Okay, so then he was also a C-47 pilot, so he flew a transport plane, and he said that varying different things, like during the Battle of the Bulge, supplies for the forward troops, and he said he actually got caught behind, well, not behind the lines, but during the Battle of the Bulge, his plane was grounded when he brought in some supplies for Patton's forces, and then had to stay there for a while until he could fly out because of the weather and the snow and ice and everything. He also said one of the C-47 planes in his unit had gotten shot down by a German Me-262 jet fighter plane. So that sounds pretty scary. It was new technology at the time. Jet fighters, the Germans had the first jet fighters, and very terrifying to U.S. personnel and pilots at that time, because the U.S. did not have the fighter jets deployed during World War II in the European theater like the Germans had. So it was a new technology, a new danger. All right, so let's turn to our current speaker, Clem. Clem Leone. Charlie and I had the pleasure of going to Gettysburg, to the home of Clem, to interview him a little over a year now, actually, because Clem was going to speak for us earlier, but there was a change of plan, and we're glad to have him now. And Clem was a B-24 radio operator, and he was deployed in the European theater. He went on 5 combat missions, and actually before that, even before his plane was shot down over Europe, he had the plane had problems one time over England, and he had to bail out. And when we went to Clem's home, he has a kind of a museum, actually, like there. Last month's speaker had a big museum at his home we saw too. Well, so does Clem. He had a whole gigantic room with airplanes hanging from the ceiling, like real big model airplanes, cases full of medals and uniforms he once wore, all kinds of things like that. Really interesting for people to see, like, history. And he even had like a radio set. We had all kinds of things. And okay, so but he also had the kind of the T-ring thing that looks like a shape of a T, where they pull the parachute. He pulled the parachute, and he broke his leg when he landed from that dangerous moment. But he survived, of course. He later went on these other combat missions, and he went on 5 combat missions, and on one they had a plane engine that another U.S. plane dropped a bomb on, knocked the engine out. He still continued the mission, got back home. Then on a 6th mission, he was shot down. He'll tell you more about that when he speaks. I don't want to steal his thunder, so to speak, but I think you'll enjoy hearing about that in the combat. But also his other experience. He later had a forced march. He was sent back from east to west from German POW camp over many months, weeks and months, several months. He had to go west away from the Russians. The Germans were taking away from those Russians troops. So we're really proud to have Clem here with us tonight, and I want to hand it over to Clem now. So sorry if I got a little bit long-winded there, but I wanted to get some points across and talk about these interesting stories we're going to be hearing in the future. So without further ado, I'd like to announce Mr. Clem Leone.
It's really my pleasure to be here tonight, but I want you to bear with me. Occasionally I regress when I'm giving my talks, and I give all my talks right off the ad-lib, so that I have no notes and so forth to go with. But I feel that my age gives me the privilege of doing this, and I hope that you'll bear with me. Well, as you know, when Pearl Harbor was bombed on December 7, 1941, and when this happened, I was a senior in high school. Of course, myself, like a lot of other seniors, wanted to go into service, but we had parents, and Mom just wouldn't let me go. So she told me that, and I told her, well, if you don't let me enlist, they're going to put me in the Army and the infantry, and I don't want to go in the infantry, I want to go in the Air Force. So she said, well, if they ever start drafting 18-year-olds, then I'll let you go. So as soon as they started saying draft age dropped to 18, I was right in her face, and she said, okay, you can go. And I have a picture here so that you can see it later of myself when I was 18. It's hard for me to believe I looked that young. I enlisted in the Army Air Corps, which was later changed to Army Air Force. And there's a little controversy as to what year they changed that in. It was somewhere around 40 or 41, somewhere around in there. And different opinions of different people give you different times. But eventually they did change it to the Army Air Force. They sent me to Florida for basic training. To, where's the resort everybody likes to go to? Where in Florida? The resort that everybody likes to go to. Well, it's really not important. That's what, these things are going to happen to me, but I'll try to tell you. This is now getting around December, and Christmas just around the corner, and I was issued a uniform with Bermuda shorts, knee-high socks, short-sleeved shirt, and I just couldn't believe that at Christmas time you could be wearing this kind of clothing at this time of year. But unfortunately, my basic training didn't take too long because they gave aptitude tests while we were there, and I scored high on the code aptitude test, Morse code. They did a bad need of radio operators. They gave me 1 hour of open and closed ranks out of the beach. And then when I came back to the hotel, which was our barracks, I was told that I was restricted to the hotel for shipment. The next day, they sent us up to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, for a radio school. So I took back all those fancy little uniforms that they just gave us, and then outfitted us in winter clothing. Gave me a promotion. I had one strike. This meant a lot because when I went in, I was making $50 a month as a private. Now with this promotion, I was getting $55. So most of it was spent on having chevrons and patches sewn on my uniforms. Spent 18 weeks there with the Morse code pounding in my ears, 4 hours a day for 18 weeks, plus 4 hours a day on actually repairing radio sets, receivers, and transmitters. And we're told that if we graduated, we would be given a physical to see if we were qualified for gunnery school, because they were in bad need for gunners as well. So when I finished the course and graduated, I got another stripe, which they gave me 2, and I was transferred to Arlington, Texas for gunnery school. In gunnery school, again, here we were in warm weather. All the winter clothing went back. All the now just normal warm weather uniform was issued. And 4 weeks of training with aerial gunnery, both handheld, turrets on the various planes, Allman caliber 50 machine guns. Did a lot of skeet shooting, a lot of trap shooting, anything to give you a sense of leads so that you could hit the target. Sent us up in the single engine planes with cameras, and then have a 2-target plane that we'd fire on. Be 2 or 3 of us in the plane firing one at a time, but the bullets were painted on the end, so that when we finished the tour of firing, they would drop the target, and then they would count the number of bulls by the color to see who would be qualified, who would not be qualified. And fortunately, I managed to qualify most of that. On the trap shooting, I had never fired a shotgun, and they put me on the back of a truck. It was on a circular circle, and as the truck reached a certain point, they released a clay pigeon that they used for trap shooting. And you had to then pick up the bird, as they call them, track it, and fire. Well, I had 25 rounds around this circle. I came back with 25 misses. And I figured, this is it. But they were really desperate to get gunners. So, sent him around again. Well, by this time, my shoulder was giving me a fit. And they were telling me how to hold it into your shoulder so that it doesn't hit your shoulder and so forth. But that makes a good story. But the next time around, I did manage to hit 18 out of the 25. I was just upset, I suppose, on the first round. I just didn't understand what they were trying to do. Then we had normal skeet shooting, high-low, traps and low targets, where we had to fire at the high, hit the high, fire at the low, break the low, and come around and hit the high before it passed you. And that was very interesting, a lot of fun. Then he mounted the turrets from the aircraft on the stands, and mounted shotguns in where the caliber 50s would be. And again, used the clay birds to shoot out at us. Then we had to operate the turret in order to bring the guns around to get it in position to break the target. Well, again, I was fairly good at that. That sort of came natural, I don't know why. So I passed gunnery school, and when I did, they gave me another stripe. So I was really happy. Now I had 3 stripes. I don't think I was making that much money, but they then assigned me to a B-24, actually to a B-24 crew. This was up in the Northwest, I don't recall exactly where. Here we met the pilot, co-pilot, engineer, and bombardier, all 4 of whom had just graduated from their particular training skills. Then we met the radio operator, the engineer, the waist gunners, the ball turret gunner, the tail gunner, who had also just graduated from gunnery school. And when I got there, I was assigned there as the radio operator, which called for staff sergeant. So they decided to give me another stripe. So now I've got before, and I'm really very happy about this, but still, it's a matter of removing all these stripes and having new ones sewed on constantly. After about a week, they decided that they didn't need an 11-man crew on a B-24. They could get by with a 10-man crew. So instead of being the assistant operator, I was then moved up to the radio operator, which gave me still another stripe. So now I have 5 stripes. I'm doing that on the hog. I was taking $205 a month. I mean, really big money back then. So with that, we all started our training. We started a brand new B-24 right from the Ford factory. And it didn't make us too happy to know that he was kicking those out one every hour, but we got one of the brand new ones. And we started training as a team. Now, the first people I mentioned, the pilot, co-pilot, navigator, bombardier, were officers. All the other men were enlisted men. We went through 3 or 4 months of just flying formations, flying cross country, bombing runs on targets out of Nevada, and firing on targets out in the Gulf of Mexico for air-ground firing, in case we got involved in any of that. And after extensive training, they sent us to Sioux City, Iowa, assigned us to a group, the 445th Bomber Group. I managed to get a 6-day furlough. My mom and sister came out to visit. My mom got very ill. They were given no furloughs, but they gave me 6 days to get our own. And after I got our own, I reported back to the base, and there was no one there. And the MPs told me to go to a certain barracks, and he would have a plane come in to pick us up, which they did. They'd moved the group down to Savannah, Georgia. The plane took us to Savannah. We met the group there again. We got on the plane to take a flight, had an envelope of sealed orders, and when we got to a certain point, the pilot was authorized to open these orders. And when he did, it said that we were to be assigned to England, Tibenham, England. And our first port on this flight over would be Natal, Brazil. So we went from Savannah across Florida, landed in Natal, and our plane was using too much gasoline, so they kept us there for a week, checking out the pilot to see if he was handling the controls correctly. And so happened that he was. We just had a gas hole. So they had them out belly tanks into the Bombay areas so that we could get the plane overseas. From Natal, we took off for the Ascension Island. The Ascension Island is about halfway between Florida and Africa. It's just a dot on the calendar. I mean, if they could have made a finer dot, they would have probably made it finer. And my thought right away was, the navigator just got out of school too. The same as I had. And I hope he'd done his lessons well, and we could find that spot on the calendar. Fortunately, he did. And we landed there on Thanksgiving Day. And that was the weirdest landing because the runway, instead of being nice and smooth and level, you landed and then it went sort of uphill, and then you went over a rise and then down. So it looked like you were about to take off again, but you were actually on the runway to land, which was quite a sensation for me. We had our Thanksgiving dinner there, and the next day we took off for Marrakech, North Africa. Landed there, no problems, stayed there for a couple of days, and then got orders to fly on up to Tibenham. He went back over the ocean, back over the Atlantic, then flew up the coast to Tibenham, England, to our base. And this is the base that we operated from. There they had we were assigned to the 700 Squadron. They had 4 squadrons per group. And the 701st was something that I'm sure a all of you know, most of you know me, have heard me talking about him. And this is the guy here. I think most of you recognize him if you've seen the picture. Jimmy Stewart, the movie actor. And he was a pilot on a B-24. And when I met him, he was at first a lieutenant, and he got his promotion to captain real quick. Finally, after more transition flying over England, they decided they were going to put us on a mission. So my first mission was Frankfurt, Germany. It was a long way in. I don't recall exactly, I mean, out 4 or 5, maybe 6 hour flight in. We had a lot of flak on the way in. Fortunately, no fighters, but a lot of flak. Now, flak are in case you aren't familiar with it, are shells that they fire up at you and they explode. They're like a larger hand grenade, really. When they explode, it's through these thick pieces of cast iron, so that they can get it into the middle of the formation. Even if they don't hit the planes, it's still going to do a lot of damage, and it scraps it. So, fortunately, we picked up a few holes, as most of the planes did, but nobody got hurt. We were over the target. Finally, got the order that Bombay's open and bombs away. As soon as the bombs were dropped, closed the Bombay doors, closed off the target to go back home. Now, when the planes are flying this close in formation, so that we get a nice pattern on the ground with the bomb hit, the plane goes sort of over top the other plane as you're making the turn. And when it did, this guy up here couldn't get his bombs out. So he kicked them out, and one of them hit a number 3 engine and knocked the number 3 engine right out of the aircraft. All we got was a terrific jump to the aircraft. I look out the window and there's a hole in the wing where an engine used to be. So, and we had to drop out of formation. And when we did, the pilot was having trouble maintaining altitude. So he told us to start throwing anything we could out of the aircraft to only hold 50 rounds per gun, so that we get as much weight off the aircraft as we could. We kept dropping altitude, and we lost the second engine. When we lost the second engine, then we were having trouble keeping any altitude. Fortunately, it was a heavy overcast, and we were running into a lot of flak from radar-controlled guns, but no fighters bothered us. So finally, the navigator asked me he said to the pilot, I think now we're probably over the channel. So we have Leone find out where we are. And with that, I sent to send a radio message in to get a triangulation where you get 3 points and you're in the middle of it, and they tell you really where you are. But some youngster was on a training mission over England, and he wouldn't get off the air. He was apparently he wasn't too familiar with the whole situation. He's doing training on the emergency frequency. So in desperation, I just held my hand down on the telegraph key for about a minute and a half. That just sends out a loud blurb that blanked him right out. So he stopped, I guess, to see what was wrong. And then I could get my SOSs in. Now, just as a point of information, SOS, when you hear people talking about it, SOS, dish, dash, dit. That's SOS. But that isn't the way it sounds when you send it. When you send it, it sounds like this is the way it goes over the air. And so by sending that then, they picked me up, gave me our position, I gave it to the navigator, and he said that this is over Pas-de-Calais, France. So that meant we were very close to the channel. So at that point, the pilot told the engineer to get out of the upper turret and for me to get in it. The engineer and I shared the upper turret. And so I'm in the turret and figuring, man, we finally made it. And all of a sudden I hear fighter 6 o'clock. So I swing the guns around and sure enough, here come two ME-109s coming in fast on the tail. And I'm waiting for them to get into range. Unfortunately, the range of the caliber 50, the effective range, was 800 yards. With the fighters, they had to get in to 600 yards. So this gave us a 200-yard leeway where we could bring them down before they could even touch us, theoretically. So they started in, and then we had fighters at 12. I swing around to 12, gave a sigh of relief, 2 Spitfires. So the Spitfires engaged the 2 109s. The last I saw the 109s, one was going down, the other one was beating feet for back into Germany with a Spitfire in his tail. When we got over England, the other Spitfire came in off our wing and told me to switch my IFF, my identification friend foe frequency, to channel 7, which let them know that we were an American bomber, because some of the Germans had been fixing up some crashed B-24s and mixing them with the formations to get information. So, unfortunately, I set the right chip. It was a crystal controlled set. So I put the right chip in number 7, because once they got the signal, then he came in on our wing and escorted us across the channel. Then I saw another twin-engine plane coming out, and it had a lifeboat attached to the bottom. So he came out in case we went down in the channel, they were going to drop us a lifeboat. But since they saw that apparently they had communication between the two. So they escorted us over the White Cliffs of Dover, beautiful things at the time, and we landed at our field. So that was the result of my first mission. So at that point I decided, up to that point, it was fun being in the Air Force. All these weapons that I've never seen, man, all the fun of shooting at targets, flying all over the place. But after that, I figured this crazy fool's trying to cross. So we had four more or less uneventful missions, a flak, a few fighters, fortunately not in our area, in other parts of the formation. And so we came through the others more or less comfortably. On our 6th one, we started in, we were going to bomb it was known as the Big Week, where the whole idea was to get the Luftwaffe out of the air, and at the time we didn't know why, but it was in preparation for the invasion. So if they could get air superiority, complete air superiority, it would be a big help. So we started in, went over Holland, and just as we were passing the border between Holland and Germany, we got jumped by, well, it must have been 15 at least Focke-Wulf 190s. Now, they had a little novel thing on that. They had what they call a 90mm cannon. And with that, they could set out at 1,200 yards and knock you right out of the sky. And theoretically, you couldn't touch them because your effective range was 800 yards. So now you lost the advantage that you had with the other fighter, with the 109 and their caliber 30s. So as they came in, they shot up the formation, and this time we weren't fortunate. They hit our group. And when they hit our group, apparently from the top tail, because the tail gunner was killed instantly. One waist gunner was killed outright. The other waist gunner got badly injured and burned. The plane caught fire, ruptured all the hydraulic lines on the plane, and it was blazing from one end to the other. I have a picture of one burning, that not my particular plane, but to show you what they look like when they're flying with everything from the top gun back, just as massive flames. So we took the extinguisher to try to get the flames out, and then I saw the co-pilot get up out of the cockpit. He climbed up on my radio table, so now I have to back up. Couldn't open the bomb bays, because the controls were gone. Still had our bombs aboard, couldn't drop them. The controls to drop them were reduced. So he got up, he climbed up on the radio table, he opened the hatch on top of the plane that's used in case you ditch in the water to get out. And he went out the top hatch. Now I've always had a little theory that pilot or co-pilot leaves, time for this boy to go. So I grabbed my parachute, put it on, climbed up on the table, stuck my head up out of that port. Now I want you to try to envision a plane doing about 240 miles an hour, and then you stick your head up out of the top of it. Well, of course, that blew me hard toward the tail. Well, that was a problem for me being so short, because that caught me just about here. My parachute's here. So my parachute is actually still in the aircraft, even though my head's out. So I had to take one hand, and it was all I could do to push myself far enough back to lift that parachute out of the aircraft. Once I got the parachute out, I reached up and grabbed the upper guns on the upper turret, and that's these guns that are right behind the pod. I have a picture here, you can see it if you want to come up later. And when I did, it swung me around, so now I'm laying on top of the fuselage of the aircraft with the plane burning under me and flames really heading hard toward the rear. I trying to decide whether it'd be smart to let go. Because I saw that big double tail in the back. Figured if I went back that way, I might get that double tail. Then I looked over both sides, I had engines running on both sides. If by some chance I'd go off in either direction and go right into those drops. Well, the next thing I know, I'm falling through the air at about, I guess, 13,000 feet with no airplane. So this presented a bit of a problem. The plane apparently had exploded, and when it exploded, it run me off the aircraft. Apparently, it knocked me unconscious for a little bit, and when I came to was when I found myself falling. So I pulled the ripcord, and that's the most beautiful sight you want to see. It has a cover on it, and it has elastic bands on the cover. And when you pull that ripcord, these bands flop open. Then there's a little pilot, what they call a pilot chute in there. That's spring-loaded, and that pops out. When that pops out, the air gets set, and then it pulls your main chute straight up and out. And it all looks so beautiful going up. Then all of a sudden the wind gets under that, then you get the jolt of your life as suddenly it stops your downward fall. But it is a beautiful sight. Even if you do pressure jumping, you'll understand what I'm saying. It's just beautiful. So I'm looking around, I noticed, I felt something on my face. I wiped my hand. My face, the side of my face is all bloody up into my helmet and so forth. And I'm trying to figure out where did I get hurt. I couldn't find anything. And I was looking around, and the first thought was, now, what in the world am I going to do now? Here I am over Germany, and I don't know a soul down there. So anyway, I started heading for a lake. And this presented another problem, because I figured, I got out of that airplane, I'm still alive, now I'm going to land right in the middle of that lake and drown, because I can't swim. So right away I went back to my classroom instruction again. Fortunately, I was somewhat of a nerd, and he said that if you reached up and pulled down on your shroud lines by manipulating, you could turn yourself around, and I did that, and it worked. if you were to turn yourself completely around, cross your arms and grab the shroud line and pull, that would give you a 180-degree turn. So this guy was coming in this way. I wasn't coming straight down, I was coming on an angle. Well, I figured from breaking my leg on my first jump, I wasn't going to gamble trying to land with my legs this time. So, but I figured, then again, if I could come in forward and just hit the ground and roll, then maybe I could make it okay. And this worked out real well in my mind. Until I got down to about 800 feet. When I got down to around 2,000 feet, I saw a whole group of people running toward where I was heading. Now, when I saw that, and then I remembered the information they'd given us that the German civilians were killing a lot of the flyers because they called them gangsters. And I thought, this is what's taking place. They're coming to get me. And so I landed, got out of my parachute. Luckily, I had my 45. I pulled my 45 out, threw it around in the chamber. I never could fly very good with that gun. I just got made marksman when I was learning how to shoot it. And which is the lowest score you could make with the weapon to say that you qualified. But I figured with all those people running at me, I certainly can take a few of them with me. So as they got closer, they started yelling, "Hold her, hold her." Of course, this was easy enough to understand that they were Dutch, that I was in Holland. So I motioned forward. They took me up to the farmhouse, gave me coffee and a sandwich. And then a member of the Home Guard came in, the Home Guard being a Dutchman in a German uniform, a collaborator more or less, and gave me the old normal spiel that for you, the war is over. So come. So we started walking down the road. The Dutch people kept following. They came to a fork in the road. The Germans said, go to the right. The Dutch people said, run to the woods, go to the left. Well, I'm in a dilemma now. I'm hurting the high heaven to begin with. And the guy's got a gun on me, and they're telling me not to pay attention to him. And the next thing I know, some youngster comes up. He must have been 16, 18 years old. Tapped me on the shoulder and said, come. And took off to the left. And without thinking, I took off behind him and got about maybe 15 feet down the road, then turned around to look if ready to hit the ditch if I had it, thinking the fellow with the rifle was about to open up. But the crowd grabbed him and beat him up. So the youngster took me in the woods. It had a camouflage hole in the ground, very similar to what they found Saddam Hussein in, had food and so forth in it. He put me in there and said, people will come back later after they stop looking for you. Well, a day or so later, thing opened up. They had a doctor, and he checked me over, told me I'd cracked a few ribs, and wasn't much he could do about it other than just take them, and that they'd be staying in touch. They were trying to get me to the underground. My next experience was hearing a vehicle pull up outside, and they told me to get on the vehicle. I got on the vehicle, took me to Amsterdam, and there they turned me over to the Dutch underground. Now they wanted to get me to the tip of the Pyrenees so that I could get into Spain and maybe be picked up by the British. But their route down had been compromised, so they had no safe route to send me. So I stayed with them about 4 months. We'd take walks in the evening. They gave me fake papers. I was a deaf and dumb accountant from Sumatra. And the reason for that was that my dark complexion, they're also fair. And when we go for for our walks there. My guide would be a block or so ahead of me. And when he'd make a turn, I'd watch where he turned, I'd go and make the turn, and we'd meet later, they'd take me to a different home to hide me out, hide me in attics, basements, closets, anywhere they could. And finally they figured they had a safe route. So we started south. First thing we did was cross the Dutch-Belgian border by timing the guards, the border guards. Then when we saw we had enough time, as you go in one direction, they had about 6 of us, the flyers there. One of us was sent across the border. That way we got all 6 across the border without being caught. There was another group in Belgium waiting for us. They took us into Antwerp, and we stayed with some people there. Then he turned us over to another one that was supposed to take us to the tip of the Pyrenees. He turned out to be a traitor, and instead turned us into the Germans. So I spent 2 or 3 nights in Antwerp's best prison, sleeping on straw sacks. And in those 2 or 3 nights, the lights already started. They then put us on 48s and sent us to Dulagluft for interrogation. And when I got there, they looked at my name, and when I told them my name and serial number, the interrogator says, "That name's Italian, isn't it?" "Yes, it is." He says, fighting on the wrong side, weren't you?" And they used to give me different things like this to put you at ease to try to get information out of you. But they couldn't understand why they had nothing on me pertaining to a plane that had gone down, within the last week. Because I'd gone down 4.5 months sooner. So they put me in solitary for 4 months. And apparently they still couldn't find out or weren't interested. They sent me to prison camp. At prison camp, the train stopped. We went by train. Train stopped about a mile from the camp. We had to run that mile to the camp. But the day that we got there, they had hidden youth there with police dogs. And while we were running, they'd sick those dogs on us to bite our legs and so forth. And then finally we got into the campground. When we got there, they told us that we were lucky because they had been running them in with bayonets. So we figured, well, these guys have been here a while, they just want to make the story look good. But the next day, they ran them in with bayonets. And just sticking them enough to agitate them. And they put us in tents. We got the word to ditch the tents. And when we ditched the tents, to take the dirt in our hat and put it at a given point so that we made a pile of dirt. Now the guards that were unarmed, that were walking through the camp, we called them ferrets because we were trying to get information out of all of us. And they saw that, they figured we were tunneling. So they doubled up the guard, all the towers turned their guns on us. They came in with long probes, hunting for a non-existent tunnel. And of course, this was the idea, I found out, was to irritate them to a point where they wouldn't shoot you, but to make sure that they were uncomfortable. And so, to get even with us, they punctured the cans of all any of the Red Cross food that was sent to us, so that we couldn't eat it. We'd either have to eat it or it was spoiled. Things were uneventful the rest of the time in camp. We had no sporting equipment. We made a muddy ring around the middle to get a nice pond so that we could slide on that during winter. And we made softballs out of cotton or anything we had, so we throw it on the catch. But most of our exercise was walking. They had a guide rail about 10 or 15 feet from the main fence. If you stepped over that, it was called a warning wire. If you stepped over that wire, you would be shot instantly with no questions asked. And that was made very clear to you, so that you knew what you, if our ball went over there, we had to signal one of the ferrets to come over. he had to signal the tower, and then he had to get the ball first. I mean, we just could not go in that area. Then they started artillery fire. The Russians started overrunning. Am I overrunning my time?
You're fine.
I heard the artillery from the Russians overrunning the camp. The camp was up in Poland. I have a map here later that you could look at. So they didn't want the Russians to get us because the Russians might put us back in uniform and put them back on the line. So they put us in groups of 200 and marched us out of the camp with no destination whatsoever, just go. So we started across, and I can get that for you here. We were way up here in Poland. So then we started to march across, and as we came across, we stuck in fields, and built fine fires if we were lucky, or in the barns. we were out of farm. If we're in a farm, or a farm, we've got a farm. There are several things with a farm. When we got to the farm, one nice thing about it was we had chicken houses and eggs and potato mounds. And in some of the barns, we even had some wheat that had been cut. So this gave us a chance to steal a little food, which we very generously did. And so we went in to get some eggs at this one a chicken house, and somebody had beat us to the eggs. They had us in groups of 3. And so we took the chicken. But they wouldn't let us, we wrung its neck, but they wouldn't let us have fires that night. So we carried it all the next day, and the following night, we went into a field where they allowed us to build fires. So we built the fires, and when we did, we took the that just doesn't want to stand. We built a pit, put the chicken in the pit, and then built a fire over the chicken. And after 2 hours or so of cooking, then we moved the fire to the side and pulled the chicken out. Now, you've got to bear in mind, this is a chicken that's only been dead 1 day, so that wasn't too bad. But it still had everything that comes with a chicken. So when we broke that open, if you've ever had the misfortune of smelling chicken entrails, then you know what I'm saying. And but we still, all the feathers came off as we pulled it out. So we gutted it, and we had everything that was edible on it, and got rid of it that way. The next time there goes my mind again. Well, we went into a barn, and if you were at the head of the 200-man group that you were in, you had it made, because then you could go where the fresh straw was. If you're at the tail end, you got stuck where they just cleaned out the stalls. Now, it's a terrible way to put it, but if you ever had the misfortune of sleeping in straw that has horse manure in it, you'll find that it has a tendency to bring out a real clammy sweat all over the whole body. And what it does, if you have body lice, they really love that particular temperature. So they start moving. So we'd spend the nights pulling body lights, snapping, popping them, and this way. So it wasn't a pleasant trip. Finally, we got near the English lines, and on May the 6th, the guards that we had surrendered to the English. On May the 8th, of course, the war ended. The English took all our clothing, burned it, issued us an English uniform, deloused us, and then when the war ended, gave us each $10 and turned us loose in Brussels. Now, we figured we had it made, war over and so forth, but we had a disadvantage. It seems like the European girls love the American GIs. They weren't too keen on the British. And then we were the British. So needless to say, we came back to that $10. And with that, then they made arrangements to fly us down to La Havre, France, put us on a Liberty ship, a Victory ship. In fact, it's one that is in the area, Jonathan Worth. That was the ship we came back on. It took 13 days to cross the Atlantic. And there we hit several storms. And again, my fears came up. Coming back from the war, now this thing's going to sink. Fortunately, it made it back. Got to New York, went up the Hudson River. As we went up the Hudson, all the ships at dock were blowing their horn. There's all XPOWs on there. And then the young ladies all came out in pleasure boats with records playing "Don't Fence Me In."
How's that for a story, folks? Amazing. Chris, you got a microphone?
Not right now.
Why don't you grab one, we'll answer, we'll get the questions answered. It's over here. Do you have a question for Clem? Oh, you're hooked here. There you go. There you go. You got it?
I did want to mention, after I got out of the, came back home, I went into the Maryland National Guard. I wanted to go to the Air Force. They didn't.
I check here.
They didn't have any openings with any rank, and they offered me the rank of recruit. And I didn't quite see any sense in that. And I was told by a member in the neighborhood that the infantry was looking for people. So I went down, talked to the people in the infantry, and they gave me back my rank that I had in the Air Force, although they called it Sergeant First Class instead of Tech Sergeant, as a radio section leader in Regimental Headquarters Company. After going to camp with them one year on a 15-day encampment, they had never had good radio communication. So I asked them to let me have a jeep to go see what the problem was. And the problem was operator error. So I managed to get the radio net on into going well. And they were real happy with that. So right after camp, they called me up to state headquarters, and they wanted to have a talk with me. And about 5 colonels sitting there, and they talked to me about the jobs in the platoon and different things pertaining to the platoon. And told me to sit down, Sergeant. And after then, about 20 minutes or a half hour of questions, they looked at each other, shook their heads yes, and then he said, "That'll be all, Lieutenant." So with that, then he gave me a second lieutenant's commission as a communications platoon leader. Then I wanted some time off because my wife wanted to go on a vacation, because we hadn't been on one for years, me going to summer camp every year. So they transferred me to the Army Reserve, and they transferred me as a rifle platoon leader. Well, that didn't make me happy at all. So I heard they started a United States Air Force, that they separated the Air Force from the Army, and they had a reserve center there. So I went down and talked to them. They allowed me to transfer into the United States Air Force as a communications officer. I got promoted to captain in the United States Air Force. And then they cut out my pay slot during a reorganization. So I had to go around looking for another job. And I heard that the Army had just started a signal outfit. So I went down to the Army, and sure enough they had, so they let me transfer into the signal outfit. But the only openings they had were platoon leaders, so I had to drop in rank back to first lieutenant. And 3 months later, I got called upstairs again, and they told me they were relieving the company commander, and that they'd give me back my captaincy, and that I would be the new signal company commander. Well, fortunately, the Air Force Records Center burned up. Now, they happened to go, fortunately for me, they happened to go Reserve Officer Promotion Act that gives you so many years to be at a certain rank if you're a commissioned officer. At the end of those so many years, it varies for rank. If you're not qualified for promotion, you're separated. If you are qualified, then you have to find a promotion spot to go in, or again, you're separated. So the record center burning down, they had no record of when I was commissioned as a captain. So I was a company commander for about 10 years. Then they finally caught up to me, and I was qualified for promotion. So they promoted me to major, then transferred me back to the Army Reserve, and I retired.
I'm really at a loss for words there, Clem. I really am. We have questions that you'd like to ask, Clem. Here we go, right here.
Where did you grow up, Mr. Leone?
South Baltimore.
South Baltimore?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm looking.
That's down here.
Can you still copy CW?
Can you still copy CW?
Okay.
Can you still copy CW?
Yes, but not quite as fast as I used to be. I used to take 20 to 25 words a minute. Now I'll be lucky if I could take maybe 5. I still remember the characters. I've never really tried to copy it, but remembering the characters, I'm sure I could.
Yes. Clem, were you in solitary for over 4 months, did you say?
No, for weeks.
Weeks. All right, during that time, did you receive rations from the Red Cross, or how would you describe your essentials? Bread and water mainly, or how would you describe it?
A little better than bread and water. Bread, water, and potatoes. And sometimes a soup. Looked like it was made of just about anything they could throw in it. And a faked out coffee.
All right, thanks for your comments.
Sorry.
When you were in the prison camp, did new prisoners tell you what was going on in the war as how it was progressing?
You can't hear him.
When you were in the prison camp, did the new prisoners give you any guidance on how to survive and all the things you needed to do to get through it? You were a new prisoner. Did the older prisoners help you get through?
Oh, yes, they did. In fact, they had an American camp commander who would act as a, what's the word? Go between the German officers and the prisoners.
Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry.
How many people were in the prison camp?
Approximately 10,000. That was British and American.
Here. Go ahead.
Clem, did you want to tell that one flight that you took with Jimmy Stewart?
Oh, one day sitting around at the orderly room, because it wasn't flying that day, this long, tall fellow comes strolling in, captain, and wanted to know if he had any radio operators that needed flying time. Well, most of us didn't need flying time, but I was always ready to go for a flight. So I told him, yeah, I was there. I was a radio operator. So he said, all right, he came over from 701st, and he said, meet me over at 701st at a given hour. And so we took a flight over England while he was checking out a replacement pilot. And while he was checking him out, then he started checking out the enlisted men on the plane, myself included. He wanted a position report, other similar things. Can you contact so-and-so, and engineer? He got him transferred the fuel from one engine to the other. In other words, he was a real taskmaster, but he wasn't arrogant with it. But he insisted that everyone on the plane know their job.
Let me ask you a question. What did you do in civilian life when you came back? What did you do in civilian life after you got back?
Oh, when I got back, I worked as a mechanic. First as a used car mechanic, and then as a service writer, then as a service manager, then back to the service writer again. And I just moved from place to place wherever the possibility was more money. Because I found from my time in the service that if you stayed put, you became dormant, and you were looked at as being dormant. So it was best to move around a bit. So I eventually left as a service manager, and I left and went to teach vocational auto mechanics in Baltimore County High School for 22 years.
Well, we got a question back here. Sorry.
Clem, you didn't mention the first time you had to bail out of a plane. Do you want to tell a little bit about that story?
Oh, one of the engines caught fire, and when he tried to put it out, they couldn't, and the whole ship started to vibrate, and the pilot hit the bailout button. So out we went. The plane crashed, all of us got out with the pilot.
Back here.
Oh, hold the back on your side, John.
I get
He's
the
behind you, John. I couldn't see him.
Okay.
I'll come up.
There you go. He needs to ask him about his experience on the 40 and 8.
Here, I'll let you do that.
You said something about the 40 and 8. How long you in there, and how many of you were in there?
Well, the 40 and 8, we were in there about, I guess 8 or 9 hours one day and then stayed overnight in one and then with another 2 or 3 hours. And there were 60 of us to a car. We really didn't have room to lay down. You almost had to go to sleep standing up. Very, very friendly. But it was very, very neighborly.
I'm laughing because my father's the only individual I've ever seen in my life that can fall asleep while he's standing up talking to me. And now I finally know why. Never.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Clem. It's
Thank you.
a pleasure. Oh, hey, wait, I have something for you. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Oh my gosh, I forgot. This is the most prestigious award you can get. It costs a lot of money. We only give it to our speakers. Your very own World War II coffee cup. Thank you.